All right. It's 11 o'clock and welcome. Welcome to the Lifelong Literacy webinar on the wonderful resource Reading Pathways. So, hi, what I'm going to do is share my screen with you and start a little bit of a presentation. I've got some PowerPoint slides, not a lot of slides though, because that gets really boring really quickly. So welcome. I'm going to share my screen with you right now and we will so hopefully you're all here to get the most out of Reading Pathways, the resource that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner there. That's the theme of today's webinar. Just by way of introduction, I'm a linguist in private practice. I write books about reading and spelling and grammar and that sort of thing. And I also consult to schools. In my private practice, though, I do want to kind of talk about that a little bit. We work with children who are in a vulnerable sort of situation in that they have not acquired literacy quite as easily as other children, and so they come to see us. So we get this vulnerable population where we have to bring them up to speed on literacy as quickly as we possibly can. And we're always looking for resources to help us do that. The thing is, we get less than 1 hour a week, mostly, to work with them. So that's 1/168th of their lives, which is not a lot of time. Our greatest joy is introducing new information to these children. So going over a new concept and embedding that concept so that they can become more literate, faster, stronger, better at everything that they do. The greatest regret we have at this practice is that we have to undo habits. We have to undo a whole bunch of habits. So instead of just spending our time explaining the structure of language to kids and tailor making lessons precisely to fit them, we also have to work against what they're taught at school a lot of the time. We have to show their parents how things like whole word memorization or random spelling lists or an overemphasis on quantity of writing rather than quality is a problem. And also we have to inoculate them against the fatal habit of guessing. So in this culture, in the education culture that we see today, children are taught to guess at words, and the children that we see are most damaged by this. And so that's why there's a picture of a canary there, because I say that we're all working in the coal mine, but people like me work with the canaries. They're the people that show us what's not working, and guessing, teaching children to guess, does not work. So Reading Pathways is a way of helping us approach the undoing of that habit through a parent or carer coaching model. It's one of the chief resources that we have to do that. So what we need to do for the other 167 hours that we don't see the children per week, we have to look at and find high quality resources. They've got to be easy to implement, because we're asking parents, and sometimes we're also asking teacher aides who are the least trained educators in these children's lives. We're asking them to do to give them the necessary practice in order to progress. We also have to look for resources that are aligned with the science of reading. There is a science of reading. There is a large and convergent body of information telling us how children acquire literacy, and that's called the science of reading. It comes from lots of different disciplines, and we have to find resources that align with that are high quality and that are easy to implement. And that's why we're talking about Reading Pathways today. It's one of our very favorite resources. So back to me just talking, because I'm going to pick up Reading Pathways and show you about it. The other thing is, the way that the webinar is going to run is that I'll talk about Reading Pathways. My admin and I are keeping an eye on your chat, on the chat, and we will definitely be answering questions as we go along if we possibly can. However, at the end there will be some opportunity to raise your hand and ask a live question. So we'll turn on your mic and we'll turn on your camera, and we can do that at the end as well, if that's all right. But if you have a burning question, go ahead and type it, or put your hand up if you feel that that question needs to be answered right now, and I'll do my very best to answer it. All right, so yes, the Reading Pathways resource. So hopefully most of you have this. I'm hoping that this is something that you've received. I know when I announced this webinar that people sent away for it, and hopefully it's arrived, or if you already have it, awesome. If you don't, you can rewatch this. It will still make a difference once it arrives. Yeah, people are saying they've ordered theirs, but it hasn't arrived yet. Yes, unfortunately, I purchased it from Eurolink, but it's coming from the UK. Book Depository is UK based, and I live in Australia, and I've still found them quicker than anything else. I still found them quicker. But in this strange time, it's really hard to talk about postage at all. Mine says it's coming today. Oh, Monica, what timing? Anyway, there we go. I don't make anything off this. I'm not the author of this book. Dolores Hiskis is, and she's a lovely lady in the United States that I sometimes correspond with. I did tell her about today, but I haven't heard back from her, so I'm hoping that everything's fine in Dolores's world. But this shout out goes out to her. So anyway, this is the book. Now, there's another book that looks a bit like this called Phonics Pathways, and that's also by Dolores Hiskis. And Phonics Pathways is a systematic synthetic phonics program written in a book. I personally don't use Phonics Pathways because it's not my job to teach beginning literacy to children. What I do is I work with children who need help with literacy. And so they've already come preloaded with quite a lot of code-based information. So it's not my job to do that. So I don't use Phonics Pathways, but I do use Reading Pathways. So if you have Phonics Pathways, that's not what we're talking about today. All right, 2 a.m. Anne-Marie. Gee whiz, it's 2 a.m. where Anne-Marie is. That's dedication. That's amazing. All right, thank you for letting me know. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing that I wanted to tell you about was that there are a few bits and pieces in Reading Pathways that, because it's a good idea to read the instructional guide as well. There's a few things that I just want to mention that are quite worth mentioning, I think, because they are not quite it's not language that I would use. And nothing's perfect, and nobody agrees on every single thing, but there are some slight adjustments that I've found are worthwhile to make. The first one is that on page 1, the author does talk about this thing called visual aerobics. And actually, I know that Dolores is incredibly well-meaning, and that she uses this term visual aerobics. She says, Reading Pathways provides this kind of practice with graduated aerobic reading exercises, visual aerobics. Visual aerobics is not a thing. What Dolores, I think, is referring to is the process of orthographic mapping. And so if we replace visual aerobics with orthographic mapping, I think we've got a really good, really well-aligned science of reading term there. The other thing is that in the guide to the letters on the pages, Dolores used diacritics, and those are little marks above the letters to show whether or not a vowel is representing its sound or representing its name. They aren't strictly necessary, and mostly I ignore them. It's up to you what you want to do, but you don't have to learn a whole bunch of diacritics. The other thing is there's some terminology that Dolores uses called short and long vowels, and I'm sure you've heard of that before. If you have come to my webinars, though, you'll know that I don't use those terms because the time it takes to make a vowel is almost it's imperceptible, especially to children who are already struggling with phonological processing. So I use sound and name instead, not short and long vowels. So those are the slight adjustments that I use, and that's it. All right. Now, I can see that my girl is suffering from a bit of an allergy attack, so it's okay for you to go. No problem. All right. So my admin is having to leave because she's really having a bit of an allergy attack, and I can't hang on to her any longer. So it's just me. It's just me. All right. I can keep adminning. Oh, from your bedroom? Oh, yeah. Ah, she might admin it from her bedroom. I work from home anyway. Okay, so let's get on with it. Let's start on page 3. So this is the very, very first exercise with Reading Pathways. I do believe I have a picture of it here in case you don't have the book in front of you. So I'll just get that up for you. And I'm going to run you through this page as an example of how I run all the other pages. Sharing my screen with you again, and I will get to some questions after we do this page. There we go. You should be able to see that. Now look, I took a picture of that this morning, so the color of it's a bit horrible. And as you can see, this is a well-used copy. So it's creased, it's got some smudges on it. My apologies, your copy is going to look a lot nicer than that. As you can see up in this top right-hand corner, we've got some diacritics over those letters. Yep. I tend not to go with the diacritics. It's just another symbol to learn. This is how I do it with my children. And by the way, I think there was a question, what are the prerequisite phonics skills? They need to know their simple code. They've got to be at that point. If they don't know that yet, you should go to 100 Easy Lessons by Siegfried Engelmann before you do that. The Engelmann book undercuts this one. So they've got to have their simple code. This is not teaching them the simple code. So here we go. What I say is you're going to read these words. I'm sure you can read all of these words already, or most of these words already. That's not what this is for. What this is for is it's going to train you to say exactly what your eyes see instead of guessing. You're going to be able to say these words and word parts slow and fast, and I want you to be able to do both of those things. So I'm using slow and fast, I'm using that language, but what I mean is segment and blend, right? So my turn, I'm going to do it first, then it will be your turn. When you see a line in between letters, you say it slow. When there's no line, you say it fast. Here we go. K, a, ka, cat, cat. I'm making sure that I'm getting very, very pure sounds there. I don't want k, a, I don't want ka, t, yeah? So when a sound has no voicing, I'm trying to train the children to make sure that they don't use their voice either. That's really, really hard though, as you'll see from the video that I'm going to play you later. So I go, my turn, listen, k, a, ka, cat, cat, your turn. And they do that first line under my guidance. I like them to point as well. I really like them to use their fingers as they go along to help them, to guide them along. All right, then they go to the next line. F, a, fa, fat, fat. Now, it's up to you whether you remove the scaffolding and don't do it first for them, or you can actually just do it until they're confident doing this say it slow, say it fast thing. This is not a test. These are drills. This is practice. These are like musical scales. And down here is the symphony. Do you get that? So this is all practice. It's not about reading these particular words. It's can I segment? Can I blend? So that's the first bit. And they do that all the way down until they get to this one. And on this one, they'll go ma, max, max. And I'll say, why is there a capital letter? So one of the things that I like to do with this is do some really good linguistic instruction straight away. We also do some comprehension instruction here as well. Amazingly enough, we do. So why is there a capital letter there? Because it's a name. Good. Next one, d, a, da, da, d, dad, dad, s. And this is where there's a supplementary lesson that I'm going to show you now. In that word, dads, that you just saw, there was a suffix on there. Do you know what a suffix is? So I pre-teach suffix whenever I can. A suffix is a letter or letters that goes at the end of a word to change that word's meaning. We're going to take the word dad Here is our whiteboard lesson. We're going to take the word dad. Now, think of something that dad owns, that belongs to dad, his favorite thing. And they'll say something like boat. So I'll go, okay, so if I had a sentence and I said, oh, look, I can see dad boat. Would that make sense? And the answer is no. How do I change it to make that make sense? Oh, look, I can see, and they go, dad's boat. And I go, exactly. You have to add this suffix. This suffix here has a meaning, and the meaning is owns this. Dad owns this boat. It's just a really, really, really fast way of showing the relationship between this thing and this thing. It's just one letter and a mark, apostrophe S, and it means owns this or owns these. Yeah. And already we've got some pretty great grammar there, haven't we? The reason I do it straight away is because all through Reading Pathways, you have this genitive apostrophe and S. We have this suffix. All right, so you might as well, I've never ever seen the hyphen confuse anyone, Don, ever. I have all of my suffixes hyphenated to show, whoops, that was upside, no, it wasn't, to show that they are not words, they are word parts. Yep, they're not words on their own, they're word parts. So there is a non-hyphenated letter S, and that is the sound S that starts words, that goes in the middle of words, that goes, anywhere in words. This is a suffix denoted by an apostrophe, and that comes through all of my work, so they get used to it very quickly. All right, so there we go. The next line, sharing with you again, has j, a, ja, ja, n, jan, jans. And I go immediately, what's that suffix there? What's that telling us? And they then I'm checking for understanding that they can apply this to something else. Why has this got a capital letter? Because it's a proper noun, someone's name. Great, now you've done all the practice, it's time to read this story. The way you read this story is you read it one word at a time. A new word will be put on the end of each line all the way down the pyramid. When you get to a full stop, I'm going to ask you a question about the sentence that you read. Before there's a full stop, what you're reading is something called phrases. And as you can see in here, you see this little guy here, he's on every page. He's called Dewey the Bookworm, and he's on every page. And he says, only the complete sentences have periods at the end. The rest of the lines are only phrases. Everything that Dewey is saying in these dialogue boxes here are not for the kids to read. That's kind of your guidance. It's not for the kids, okay? Sometimes they want you to read it to them. That's fine. But if they're at this level here, this is not for them to read. So you get the kid to do the first word, Jan's. Then it goes, Jan's fat. Sometimes they giggle at that because they think Jan is fat. You can let them get over that, no problem. Jan's fat cat, Max. Jan's fat cat, Max sat. Hold it, there's a full stop there. And this is where you say, what are you picturing? What's this story about? Because it is easy at this level to just be decoding, yep, and not thinking about the story as well. And look, I love comprehension. I want people processing the language as they go along. Big fan of that once they've decoded the words. So what are you picturing here? I'm picturing a cat. What kind of cat? A fat one. Very good. What's his name? Max. Who does he belong to? Jan's. How do you know he belongs to Jan? Because there's an apostrophe S, and so on. So I can ask lots of questions about that sentence. It's a very rich sentence. What's he doing? Is he running? No, he's sitting. Good. You've really understood what you're reading here. All right, next line. Jan's fat cat Max sat on Dad. Right, how are you going to change your picture? And so they have to change it. They have to go, oh, well, it's on a person now. Great, read the next line. Jan's fat cat Max sat on Dad's hat. Oh, you have to change the picture again. Where is it now? And so on. So they're changing the picture as they go along as well. Really rich stuff here. There's some really rich exercises just in that little page. Can you see why I love it? Can you see why I love this book? It's really good. It's really rich. All right, that was page 1. Let me answer some of your questions. Let's have a look. What are the prerequisite phonics skills you need before you start reading Pathways? Annabelle, they have to know their code. They have to be able to at least have one sound association for every letter of the alphabet, because it's coming up. Yep, they have to know that at least. I think they expect kids, this is Frank, I think they expect kids to be able to blend CVC words before starting phonics pathways. No, they don't have to blend them. Phonics pathways, I don't know. We're on reading pathways, Frank. They don't have to be able to blend CVC words, because if you look again at page 1, that blending is being taught to them. K, ka. Yep, cat, cat. So if that's not quite there for them yet, but they have their code, their initial code, you can start there. All right. Why would the hyphen on the suffix confuse? Oh, we've got that one. Do you make a different sound? Not sure what you mean. Do you make a different sound? Can you clarify that, please? Do you use this blending technique in your regular work as well? This is my regular work. I'm not sure what you mean. Remember, I work with a whole range of students, Frank, and so this is one of the ways in which we get them that necessary practice, the other 167 hours that they're not here. But if you want to clarify, I can answer a bit more. Yes, apostrophe S versus just S on its own. That's right. S denotes a plural or a third person singular. Apostrophe S denotes genitive case. All right. Are you making up the script, or does it come with the book? I'm making it up. Sorry, but here's a surprise for you. Here's a good thing. The Henderson, I'm not sure. Oh, yes, I know who you are. Hi. I'm making up the script, but I have on my website, just on the free webinars page, I've just uploaded a PDF that's got, and I'm going to show you this, it's got a guide to all the things that you can pre-teach and that you can ask up to about page 36. After that, I got busy. I can't do the whole book, but it'll give you a good idea up to page 36. Right, good. Sound Q may refer to voice or unvoiced, CF unvoiced. Q, the letter Q. Yep, there is a page, I do believe, that tackles QU. Again, this is not to replace phonics. This is not to replace structured literacy. This is a way of practicing building fluency and making sure that children are able to blend and segment words. I think they mean S plural versus apostrophe S possessives pronounced differently, perhaps, although to Jans is pronounced the same as Jan's cat. So I'm not sure about that. That second column looks like an open syllable. Yeah, it does. How might we not confuse kids when we approach the teaching of open syllables? Well, we need to explain words and fragments. So these are word fragments. These are word parts, ka, fa, sa, that will have their syllable closed in the very, very next thing that you do. It's never been a drama, never been a problem. Decontextualized, it probably would be. You're quite right. Outside of you, Frank says, outside of using reading pathways, do you use this sequential blending technique with other books or methods? Well, yes, I do. If children are coming to unfamiliar words that they haven't unitized yet, then I will get them to go through each sound in the word and put it together, or each sound, each syllable, and then the word. I hope that answers your question, Frank. Do they make a different sound, apostrophe S versus S? It depends on the word that they're on, depends on what precedes them. Location determines lots of things, and including the way that graphemes are realized in speech. All right, thank you, that's amazing. Good. No, ka does not confuse them because it's a fragment. You do need to explain that you're doing fragments here. Would you start at the beginning of the book for all kids, Colette? That's a brilliant question. No, I don't start at the beginning of the book for all kids. However, most of the time I do. Even for the older ones with a bit more skill, this starts to get hard quite quickly. So the ones with a bit more skill, the older kids, the grade 3 upwards, I will say to them, at first, it's going to be really easy. Look, check this out. I mean, you know how to read all those words, right? But this isn't about reading those words. This is about knowing what to say when your eyes see letters on the page. Rather than guessing, this is about retraining yourself to believe the evidence of your eyes, right? And process every single letter in every single word like good readers do. So it's going to be easy at first. It's going to get harder quickly. So get your practice in now. And it's about getting to automaticity. Yes, it is, Monica. Christy is saying, should I start with phonics pathways for my youngest? You can, yes. I don't know your youngest, and I don't know what other resources you have. So it's hard for me to answer, but it's a good resource. Phonics Pathways is a good resource. I would go to Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons by Siegfried Engelmann before this. That's my undercut to this. All right, next bit. Let's do the next bit. Okay, so they do all this practice. So it goes a, e, I, o, and a. And there's definitely some vocabulary to pre-teach. If you are not from America or Canada, there are names in there that are not used in Australia and England as much, or Scotland, or Ireland or Wales or wherever you're from. So this is a North American book. So you have to sometimes pre-teach those names. So that's fine, do that. And there are also, some words like pop, meaning, sorry, that should be off. Pop meaning soda, meaning fizzy drinks, effervescent beverages. You can pre-teach that. It's not a big deal. You have to remember that anyone who is outside of America is exposed to American culture a lot. So you might as well teach all that stuff. All right, so you've got a, I, o, a. Then it moves to a, e, I, o, u. It doesn't make a great big fuss, right, of saying why vowels say their names rather than their sound, but you can point that out, okay? So if you go to the A, E, I, O, U parts, it goes through 2 consonant endings first as well. Sorry, I'll just get to that. All the vowels here are going to say their names. A, yep. So when you see the A in these words, say A now. You can also do a mini lesson on it's the fact that final silent E is a signal for that vowel to say its name. Dolores Hiskis, the author, also says that you should be dictating those words for spelling and dictating the sentences as well for spelling. So there's lots more that you can do rather than just focus on that one page all the time. There's lots, each page represents a reading and spelling lesson. Remember though, it's a supplement. It is a supplement. There are other things that you can be doing in life or should be doing in life. For instance, working at the sentence level and getting children writing and thinking about good sentence structure. So there's lots you can do. This isn't the be all and end all, but by golly, it's good practice. All right, so you've got A, E, I, O, U that comes up as well. And we will, I don't have a page on that, but same kind of thing. And then it starts to get a little bit more complex with mixed vowel pyramids. And then you're going all the way through, and it talks about digraphs, talks about initial and word final consonant blends as well. And once you get to page 80, that's where it all changes again. So I'm going to show page 80 to you. All right, there's page 80. So now we have what's called the multi-syllable word mini pyramids. A little caveat for the multi-syllable word mini pyramids. Dolores has tried to give us the base and then the prefixes and suffixes. So she's tried to go base, and then adding morphemes to those bases. Sometimes they're not as morphologically sound as I, as a linguist, would like. And that's something that you have to wrestle with. That's something that you have to wrestle with. On this page, it's all fairly straightforward, but there are some other pages where I would split the words a little bit differently, but it's still good enough in my mind, especially if you are new to this, if you're a novice, if you're a parent, if you're a non-teacher. It's got high enough quality to be, you know, pretty foolproof. So this is what you do. First of all, you have to read this word part. My turn, and I like to model it for them. Press, impress, impression, impression. So this bar here means that you have to put the emphasis on the syllable that comes before the bar. So it's not press, impress, it's press, impress, impression. Yep. That's as good as she can make it. And she's splitting along orthographic rather than morphological lines here. Don't get too caught up in that. Get, forget, forgetful. Now read the sentence. I have the impression that Dora can be a bit forgetful. Now, before we even get to reading that sentence, I then have them, or I define the word for them. An impression is a feeling that you get about something. You think it might be true. Yep, doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but you've got some evidence to think that something is true. So I have the impression that you're listening. I have the impression that you like this book. Yep. And forgetful, and so you can pre-teach all of this vocabulary, and make sure you do, because it actually starts to become we're moving from phonics and fluency, yep, into vocabulary, one of the pillars of reading. So there are some absolute doozies here, such as enchanting and mountainous and sympathetic and interlocking and so on. Lots and lots of opportunities to build vocabulary. Now, I've got to say that when you get to the multi-syllable pyramids, you need to take it one sentence per session. Don't do 4 or 5 pages at a time. That's cognitive overload out the window. This stuff is rich. It's rich, so enjoy it, savor it, work through it, rather than trying to just get to the end. Use it to build vocabulary and build understanding of sentence structure and so on. No one wants to practice their scales. I feel your pain, Amy. Monica, no one ever explained the point of scales to me. Yes, you've got to explain the point of this, right? Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Okay, so those are the multi-syllable word pyramids. And when they get to this point, they're doing really well. Don't rush it. Don't rush to get to this point. Yep. Don't overload them too much. They will get there eventually. And I have some wonderful students who have got all the way through the book, and that's helped them launch into reading anything that they want to read. Now, I've made a video of a boy doing this lesson. So I'm going to show it to you now, and going to show you one last page, and then it'll be question time. All right. So let me get this video up for you. And this is just an example of a lesson that one of my students did fairly recently, and some of the questioning that goes into it. So he's on page 49 at the moment, and I'm just going to share that with you now. So I'll just go back a couple of seconds, and you should probably be able to see that now. My turn? My apologies. So this is ah. So we're going to get here, which is awesome. So go for it.
Ja, gen, Gens.
Good. We've got this suffix again, apostrophe S. What does that mean?
That means it belongs to someone.
Oh my goodness. That was brilliant.
Look at that. Well.
My turn. You said la, so that's going to be la. It's going to be a fragment of the next word, but this is the new bit here. B-la.
Black.
Good.
Black. Black.
Good.
Cat. Catchies.
Good. Now you're looking at me. Are you sure you know what that word means?
No.
Okay. So this, the vowel in this part of the word here, is going to be more like catches.
Catches.
Yeah. Yep. So my dog catches mice. Okay, cool. Keep going.
Kitty. Kitty.
Brilliant.
Misty.
Good.
Misty.
Yay! You figured it out.
Fuzzy. Fuzzy.
Good. And now vowels saying their names. A, E, I, U. Go. Excellent work. All right. Read the story.
Jen.
Good.
Jen's tiny fuzzy. Jen's tiny fuzzy cute fuzzy kitty. Jen's tiny cute fuzzy kitty.
Good.
Dives deep.
Okay, hold it there. So what's this about?
A tiny kitten, tiny cute fuzzy kitten diving deep.
Very good. Diving deep. Where do you think?
In a lake.
Cool.
Jen's cute fuzzy kitty dives deep in a misty. Jen's tiny cute kitty dives
Good self-correcting.
deep in a misty lake. Jen's tiny cute fuzzy kitty dives deep in a misty lake and finds a huge black whale.
That is brilliant. So what happened to this cat?
He or she dived down into a misty lake and found a huge black whale.
It's pretty scary. Do you usually see huge black whales in misty lakes?
No.
Why not?
Because they can't get out anywhere.
That's
there's
true.
No food. Once they've eaten all, there's no food.
Where do whales usually live?
In the ocean.
Exactly. Lakes are enclosed. You're absolutely right. Their food supply would run out. Very good. Thank you, Lucius. That's it. All right. So there you go. That's that. Now this kid, I don't see that regularly. He's on a home program. So every now and again, I get to see him, and I've got a few videos of him. He's my nephew. So he's doing all of this at home, and I'm not doing that much else with him. But he's coming along beautifully. Now, Frank, thank you. So the Florida Center for Reading Research also uses these pyramids in a sailboat fashion, if anyone is interested. Yes, I'm really, really interested. I need lots of resources. So I will be looking that up. And Frank, thank you for that link. What I'm going to do is put that, if you don't mind, is put that on the website as well so that people can access those things through the link as well, if that's all right with you, Frank. Thank you. Now, Don says, I like how you use my turn when he made an error. I have to stop myself from saying no. Well, I'm going to tell you a tiny story. I used to work for Lindamood Bell Learning Processes, and everybody who lives in America probably knows what I'm talking about. So I'm Lindamood trained. I was there at the beginning when they were doing the research and development on their program Seeing Stars, but they already had the LIPS program, or what they called the ADD program, the Auditory Discrimination in Depth program. One of the things that we did as clinicians at Lindamood Bell was that we would work with up to 6 students a day, 5 days a week. That's how intensive the program was. And within our training, we were told never to say no. So we actually had to figure out other ways of correcting children and resisting the urge to say no. And it's something that's so deeply ingrained in everything that I do that yeah, I probably can't even force myself to say no these days. So things like my turn's good. I also like saying interesting to stop them and then go, you said blah. What it says on the page is blah. So do you think you could, you know, and so on. So I found like thousands of ways not to say no. It's a really good habit to get into. Do you send this work, Vicky is asking, do you send this work home for parents to implement with their child? Yes, I do. A lot of the children who will benefit from this need that practice. They only see us once a week. They need, in the meantime, 2 things. They need to practice, and they need to be inoculated against one of the reasons that they're seeing us in the first place, and that is they're being taught to guess at school. So yes, I send these home with parents. I recommend that parents buy them. They're really cheap. They're like 30 Australian bucks. So that's even cheaper in the US. From Book Depository, and they're a really, really good investment. So this is part of the parent coaching thing that we do. I train the parent by doing exactly what I'm doing in this webinar today. And now that I've made this webinar, they can watch that. So that's theirs forever. It just helps them get that practice. Monica says, I found Sounds Right really helpful for figuring out neutral error correction prompts too. Yeah, it's a really, really good thing to have in your toolbox. All right, now, it is 1:45, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking questions from anybody who wants to say a question. If you would like to say a question, on your there's a bar that you can, there's a control bar on your screen, and on that, there's a button that you can press to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, I'll unmute your mic and I'll ask to turn your camera on, and then I can take talking questions as well. One thing that you need to know about talking questions is this, or any questions, in fact. I have never met your students or your children. So if you're asking, if you have a question about them in particular, it's going to be really hard for me to answer that, because I would need a big case history. I'd need to see all of their writing, and I'd need to do some assessments. And then I could give you an answer that might be close to what you need. If I go in blind and talk about your student or your kid, I might give you the wrong information, and I don't want to do that. So I can't answer individual case questions. Can you show an example at the end of the book? Oh, yes, of course I can, Colette. In fact, I was going to think of some questions while I do that, okay? Sorry about that. The very last page that I'm going to show you is kind of the celebration page. And this is where there are lots and lots of points actually on this, in this book, where they celebrate the next thing. And this is the very end, but before that there are other points where it's like, wow, you got to this bit, you realize you've just achieved something really phenomenal, and now you're at this bit. But this is the last page, Teresa's. A lot of the sentences, once you get on a little bit, are like tongue twisters as well. So linguistically, phonologically, phonemically, they're really fun to do as well. But Teresa's bubbly and effervescent personality enchanted everyone, especially when she played her magical guitar and sang those lovely haunting lullabies. Now, previous to that, they would have, there are opportunities to pre-teach that vocabulary, especially things like effervescent and so on. I don't use the bubbly and effervescent, like they're called brainbusters, the brainbuster pyramids. I don't use them particularly for spelling lessons, so we're off dictation when it gets to the multisyllable word triangles. But as you know, reading progresses faster than writing. So it's up to you what you want to bring in, but bringing in the word effervescent for spelling when they're still struggling with would, could, should probably isn't a great lesson, if that makes sense. So that's the last paragraph, I do believe, and that is cause for huge celebration. So I hope that satisfies your curiosity about what's at the end. Now, if you're reading that, if you're able to read that and read it fluently, you can read anything, just about. Yep, you can decode, or you have the necessary skills to decode what's in front of you. So it's a really good place to get to, I think. All right. When the kids are doing their school readers, should we be getting them to segment and blend the same way as the book? If those school readers are leveled readers that are written for predicting what words are instead of decoding words, my advice is to ditch them altogether. Yep, how controversial, but it's true. They're readers that encourage guessing, readers that have that repetitive pattern so that you actually don't have to decode, are not great for the kids that we work with, especially the population that we work with. So I would, if I would throw out all readers and do 100 easy lessons and then this. That's what I'd do if I were you, but you know, that's a fairly controversial stance. Vicky is saying at cat or cat. The book says cat. This is about being able to segment, blend, put it all together to form a word. How can I check that I'm getting the level of scaffolding right for the student at the time? How much stumbling and self-correction should I expect if things are in the zone? Stumbling and self-correction, how can I check? Monica, that's a huge question. I mean, you know, what in the instructions in the book, it does say you can read one line at a time and then come back to it. It's not like you have to complete a page. And I'm very much of the feeling that once they start to struggle, you can't let them go on much further than that. You then need to come back to it. If they're struggling very significantly with this book, it's the wrong level. You shouldn't be doing it with them. Do you know what I mean? So there's that. How much stumbling and self-correction? I expect self-correction all the time. And there are some children who find it very, very difficult to not stumble. If they're self-correcting while they're stumbling, that's fantastic. It's really good. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Frank, how do you integrate spelling practice with this work and everything else you do? That's a massive question, Frank. Again, me personally, I use this to get non-experts to practice while I'm not seeing them. So when they come to see me, then I, on the go, build a tailor-made program based on what they need to know next. I've written a program about it called Spelling for Life. It's a book and it's an online course that you can do anytime that answers the spelling questions, but how you integrate that depends on the individual in front of you. Also, what kind of changes do you see with kids when using this resource? That's a really good question, Frank. Well, look, what we work on this principle at Lifelong Literacy. All the kids that come to see us end up reading. That's our goal. That's what we aim for. We're very successful in doing that. As far as writing goes, that's a different story. Writing is hard, much, much harder because it has so many other factors that can impinge upon it. So before I used reading pathways or had reading pathways in kids' lives, and I've not done any research on this because my job, I'm not a researcher. But before I did this, they still made that goal of reading, but I am finding, and this is an anecdote, so take it with as many pinches of salt as you need. Before using this, I would say that their progress was slower. If they were using it, again, sometimes you can give the book to families and they don't use it. So everybody's got this different trajectory, and there's lots and lots of factors on that. But I know, for me, once I got this book and started using it, it was kind of for me like, oh, I wish I'd had this 10 years ago, you know, because it's taking the mechanics, it's taking the having to think over and over again about how I'm going to get this kid decoding and fluent and not guessing. It's taken all of the grunt work out of that. And I think somebody else said something about that, they didn't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So this book stopped me having to reinvent the wheel, and it gives them that necessary practice. So I don't have any numbers on that, of course, because that's not my job. I hope that answers your question, Frank. Now let me see. Dictation equals spelling practice. Absolutely, I love dictation. Dictation's brilliant. How do you use the book in a small group situation? I never have, Rebecca. I guess that's up to you to report back on that, because that's your thing. All right. Yes, don't want to reinforce this is hard, I'm bad at this. Absolutely. Take it bit by bit. Take your time. I can't wait for my book to arrive. Me neither. I hope you like it. Frank, I see. Thank you for all your answers. Thank you, Frank. All right. Good stuff. When you get to a full stop, I'm going to ask you a question. Yeah. Take your time. Don't rush through this book. It's rich if you know how to use it, if you use the richness within it. Those were the chat questions. If anyone has an out loud question, I'll take your questions now. If not, then it's time for us to go. I'm going to show you my website in a second. And I'm going to show you the thing that I've come up with to help with all of this. So I'll just share this with you. Sorry, everyone. I used to be a lot slower than this, so, so you're lucky I'm this fast. Dun, dun, dun. All right, back to this again. Hopefully you can see the tracker now. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, that's the green box around it. So one more time, Reading Pathways Tracker. Hopefully you can see this, right? Reading Pathways Tracker. We're not seeing your website. Whoops. And that's the tracker. It's just a PDF, just a bunch of questions pages, the sound that you're introducing or the sounds that are on these pages, and some example questions. Hopefully you can see that. That's there for you to see. So going back to the website, just so you know, this is the home page, lifelongliteracy.com. What you do is you go to the resources tab, you click free webinars. That's got all the webinars, yes, and including Spelling for Life ones for kids, and on the how to run Reading Pathways lessons at home, there's the Reading Pathways tracker. At some point, and I can't make this more clear for you, I can't make this more clear. What happens now is that my computer and Zoom talk to one another, and Zoom uploads this webinar to my computer. That takes ages. Then I have to put that onto my editing software. That takes ages. Then my editing software has to convert that to an MP4. That takes ages. And then the MP4 has to be uploaded to YouTube. Guess how long it takes? Ages. And sometimes it takes me a couple of days to get these webinars up there. So check back on my website. It will be live at some point. All right. Glad you can all see the tracker now. If there are no more questions, then I am going to say goodbye. I have a student in 3 minutes. So it's been lovely seeing you all. Thank you so much for coming. Hope to see you again soon. And take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. And one day, I hope to bump into you all in person. All right. Take care, everyone. See you.